Here we have a gift we received. It's a GPS wireless fence. The nice thing about this unit is it doesn't require any subscriptions, fees, apps, anything of that nature. It's just all self-contained in this one unit. It utilizes GPS tracking to accurately track where your dog is and give them a warning if they ever get outside the perimeter. Right now we got charging with the little magnetic charging pad that pops right against this back here. It can deliver a static shock to your pet with these little prongs. So they do come with these little rubber protective covers. That way it's not direct, your dog's skin's not directly in contact with the harsh metal screw. There are replacement caps and there are also different sizes. So the ones I have on there now are the short sizes, but then there is a slightly larger size that can be used instead. Just in case your dog has thick fur or anything like that needs to get that longer reach to get to the skin. There are all sorts of features on this unit. Definitely take your time, read through the instruction manual, get a good understanding of it. But long press or long hold of the power button will turn it on. So we hold press, and I got a vibration, and now the unit's on. You'll see the GPS is flashing. That's it trying to connect that signal. It might not be able to connect the signal. All right, perfect, it did. One thing I warned you about in the manual is that things like eaves, overhangs, interior, so inside the house or anything like that, it might have trouble with the GPS signal. So it's highly recommended for just outdoor use only. There are, as you can see, we have along here at the bottom, these are the various methods of alert to your dog or pet. There is the audible, vibration, and then shock. If you notice the first two are highlighted, the last one is not. That's because we have shock turned off, because I do not want to accidentally press that when I should demonstrate the unit. To get to those settings, double click the power button, and then we come to that option here. And from here, we got shock, vibration, sound. The two arrow buttons allow me to adjust and bring it to whatever level I want to set it towards. And then it will cycle back to the beginning. And then the what's the way to describe this little geolocation button, if I press that allows me to shuffle down to the next one for vibration. Press it again, allows me to shuffle down to the next one for the sound. And then if I want to get back to that main menu, the power button brings me back to the main menu. Now you'll notice it says 49 feet and 13 feet. 49 feet is the set radius for the geofence that we have set right now, and then 13 feet is how far I am away from that pin. So to show you that, I press the power button once, and then we come back to the radius feature. So there are two ways in which you can kind of keep that zone. First one is the radius. Now if you notice there's one flashing pin, and that's all you get. So you'll notice it says 49 feet. That is the minimum radius that you can have. I can't go any lower than that, but I can go higher than that. And so I go up to 59, 62, all the way up. It totes a 6,561-ish feet radius that you can have, which is a huge distance. That would work great for anyone that's got acres of yards, farmlands, anything like that. But for the average household user, you might keep around the 50 level. But basically that is the radius that you're setting for your field. Now remember, it is a set point and it's in a circle radius around that point. So if you want something more specific because you have a short distance from one side of the yard and a long distance on the other side of the yard, and you want to be able to accommodate that without having to have some sort of weird placement of your center pin, you can go to the secondary option for geofence, and that is press both the left and right arrow at the same time simultaneously and hold them down, and it switches to the geofence setting. This one doesn't drop one pin, it drops several pins. I believe you can go up to about 5, 6 pins, something like that. When you find a point that you want to drop your pin, press the geofence pin button, and that will drop your one pin. Then you walk to your new point, and you press the button again to drop your new point. Now, if you notice, if you don't go far enough and you drop that point, it will flag you saying you must have a minimum of 16 feet. So that's something to keep in mind when you're setting your boundaries. If you mess up, you can clear them by pressing and holding the arrow buttons, and that'll clear your point. So from there, you just walk the distance, right? You can make a square, rectangle, whatever shape fits your yard, hit the outer boundary points, mark them off, and then the interior space will be the space that's reserved for your pet. And then it will give you a beep, a warning anytime you get close to that fence point. Same thing with the radius feature. If the dog approaches that radial line at 49 feet, or 55 feet, whatever you have it set as, it will buzz, alert, vibrate, and then it needs to escalate to the shock. It does mention about a cutoff point for to avoid overstimulation, so it'll go through 2 cycles of a static shock, and then it'll cut off automatically just to kind of preserve and avoid overstimulating the dog and causing them to go into a panic. If the dog does return to its safe point and return to the center of the area, it'll automatically turn off as they approach the area. It does speak to about a 10-foot warning space where as you approach that marker, it will go off in advance of that line. One thing I noticed when I was kind of experimenting with it and kind of playing with it myself, if I approached the line very, very slowly, it would be a little bit delayed going off. And that's because I believe the GPS just didn't pick up that change in spacing as quickly if you were actually running at the fence. So it's something to kind of keep in mind. If you're approaching it fast, it'll go off quickly and it'll recognize that you're hitting that line quickly. But if you're approaching slowly, it may take a second for the geofence to kick in and recognize, oh, you're at that point, and it'll kick and bring and alert and bring the dog back. Worked great. I was actually surprised on how quickly that alert would go off. It vibrates hard. It beeps pretty loudly, so it definitely gives those visual and sensory cues. We did not play with the shocking feature just because we didn't want to startle our dog too much. She's a little bit on the timid side, and also we haven't really decided where we want to put those lines just yet. So once we know for sure where we're keeping those lines, then we can start trying to experiment with the shocking feature and making sure that she's comfortable with it and understands that method. It does come with these flags. And now one thing to keep in mind is, although these are flags, they have no correlation to that unit whatsoever. So if you lose these and you never use them, that's okay. This will still work appropriately because this is all by satellite GPS positioning. No apps, no subscription, nothing else needed. This unit tracks that GPS location itself, and that's a standalone unit. These are more for visual cues, right? So if you want that visual cue of this is where your warning goes off, this is where the shock area is, you can use that. If you want a visual cue as far as where you put a geo marker, or where you put a fence position, where you put a fence marker, you can use these to kind of mark off that area. And that way it can either help remind you where you put some of those markers as you're kind of figuring out what works best for your fences, or depending on how you're training your dog, you can use this kind of a visual cue for your dog as well. This is the point where that collar will set off for you, and then it can be a visual marker for your dog as well. So again, it's the GPS wireless fence unit. Check it out. All sorts of features. Definitely make sure you take your time to go through the manual and make sure you get a good understanding of how that unit works and how it operates.